Hi, and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music with me, the 80s Mixtaper. In this episode, we'll be tackling the second half of Playlist 8. The links for both Apple Music and Spotify are in the episode description. Play along as we go through the tunes. We've got some great ones coming up. Let's introduce you to David Essex, more quintessential madness, meet The Cure, pick up yet another incredible Blondie song, and end with some Rodney Franklin and Christopher Cross. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're strapping ourselves into the driver's seat of a high-octane, synth-laden spectacle from March 1980. A song that's part movie tie-in, part motorbike fantasy, and all David Essex. We're talking about Silver Dream Machine, a single which roared onto the charts, revving its way into the top 10 of the UK singles chart, and sparking a brief but glorious fascination with motorbike racing chic. It's track 8, Playlist 8. On a particularly nondescript day in the early 80s, my next door neighbour, a robust and vocal Kentish woman, appeared at our front door, and behind her was a large box. In it was a gift from her grown-up son. That gift consisted of what felt like a square mile of Scalextric track, several Scalextric cars, including the Formula 1 Lotus John Player Special, which will always be my dream car. Also included in that box was various Doctor Who paraphernalia, and most pertinent to this episode, nay this moment, a lot of motorcycle racing magazines and knickknacks. Yes, since the 70s, there was a fascination with helmeted men on sleek two-wheel machines, be it Evel Knievel, Eddie Kidd, or in this case, David Essex. And in the early 80s, motorcycles were certainly having their moment, and so was David Essex. David Essex, you know him, the mop-headed heartthrob whose voice drips with a kind of cheeky, irresistible nod and a wink that's equal part Essex boy and rock and roll rogue. David Essex, the man you could trust with a harmony, but not with your mum. David Essex, the man your nan would love in one way and your mum would love in another, are you my new dad way. By 1980, Essex had already achieved pop icon status with hits like Rock On and Gonna Make You a Star, as well as a smattering of critically acclaimed acting roles. But Silver Dream Machine marked a different era. The song was created for the film Silver Dream Racer, a 1980 British sports drama starring Essex as Nick Freeman, a motorcycle racer chasing glory on the international circuit. It's a classic underdog story, a man, a bike, and a dream. And the soundtrack, well, Silver Dream Machine is its pulsating heart. Written by David Essex, alongside prolific songwriter and composer Mike Batt, the genius behind The Wombles and Bright Eyes from Watership Down, the track captures the heady mix of ambition, danger, and exhilaration that defines both the movie and the racing world. Let's break it down. The opening synth riff gleams like chrome in sunlight, setting the tone for a song that's as much about aesthetic as it is about speed. Essex's vocals, they're pure smoothness, full of yearning and bravado, like he's already gunning down the straight at 200 miles an hour. The chorus is a grower, not a shower, but the track is still something you'd blare out of your dad's Ford Capri as you tear up the motorway. Silver Dream Machine isn't just about motorcycles. It's about the mythology of motorcycles. It's about speed as freedom, as rebellion, as destiny. Essex's delivery makes you believe you too could straddle a bike, ride off into the sunset and become a legend. It's a turbocharged power ballad for dreamers who don't mind getting a little grease under their fingernails. Despite its cinematic ties, the song's legacy stretches beyond the film. Silver Dream Racer was, let's say, not exactly a box office smash. Critics were lukewarm at best, and audiences seemed more interested in Essex's charisma than the film's melodrama. But Silver Dream Machine stood apart, a singular triumph that eclipsed its source material. It climbed to number 4 on the UK singles chart, proving that even if the movie wasn't a runaway success, the song was popular. And we can take a moment to appreciate the cultural context here. This was 1980, a year when the world was transitioning from gritty realism of the 70s to the gleaming futurism of the 80s. Synths were taking over, and motorcycles had become an enduring symbol of freedom, thanks in part to movies like Easy Rider a decade earlier. Silver Dream Machine captured that zeitgeist, fusing glam rock decadence with the mechanical allure of speed. Even today, the song holds up as a time capsule of its era, and a reminder that sometimes all you need is a good hook, a great voice, and the roar of an engine to capture the imagination of a generation, and perhaps a box of Scale Extric. Next up, we're back with the Nutty Boys, with one of their most eccentric and enduring tracks. Everybody don your fez now, and cast your gaze across the shimmering waters of the Nile. If you love madness, you'll know this calling card. If you're new to madness, brace yourselves. It's the one, the only, Night Boat to Cairo. This is track 9. By the way, this is also the 100th song we've featured in this podcast, and it's only March 1980. You can see now why I listened to about 3,000 songs. Here we go. This is already our third Madness track, but we're really only just getting started. One Step Beyond announced the band's arrival. My Girl showed their songwriting chops and Suggs' ability as a frontman. But Night Boat to Cairo plants their flag as the champions of the ska and two-tone movement. Released as a single in May 1980, Night Boat to Cairo was the 5th single from Madness's debut album One Step Beyond. The album itself is a cornerstone of the two-tone ska revival, blending infectious rhythms, Cockney swagger, and a theatrical flair that turned the band into national treasures practically overnight. But this track is something else entirely. It's a genre-defying, slightly bonkers romp through ska, Middle Eastern-inspired melodies, and pure Madness brand whimsy. Let's break it down. First off, the music. The song's distinctive intro is anchored by the superb bass saxophone blast, played by Madness's resident saxophonist extraordinaire, Lee Thompson. Then the structure to the tune. It's the work of keyboardist Mark Barson, who, if legend is to be believed, came up with it on a whim. The melody's exotic, slightly eerie tone sets the scene. You're not just on a boat, you're on a boat to Cairo, baby. Maybe there's a bit of danger, definitely a lot of adventure. The rhythm's relentless skank is pure ska, but there's a looseness here, a sense that Madness isn't tethered to the genre's traditional boundaries. And then there's Suggs, the band's gravelly voiced frontman, delivering lyrics that tell a very distinct story. It's just gone noon, half past monsoon on the banks of the River Nile. Is this a weather report? A cryptic message from some 1930s adventure serial? Who cares? It's evocative, playful, and slightly aligned with the Madness ethos. It's about fun, spectacle, and letting your imagination do the heavy lifting. So why Cairo? Why night boats? The story goes that the title was a throwaway suggestion by their producer Clive Langer. He saw the song's exotic melody and thought Night Boat to Cairo sounded just about right. The band ran with it, leaning into the imagery and crafting a track that feels like a postcard from a place that exists only in your wildest dreams. There's no plot, just a vivid sense of motion, mystery, and the absurd. And speaking of absurd, let's talk about the music video. Picture this, Madness, decked out in fezzes, pith hats, and other vaguely exotic attire, frolicking amongst the backdrop of, wait for it, a cheap blue screen desert. There are pyramids, there's sand, there's absolutely zero effort to make any of it look realistic. And that's the charm. Madness wasn't trying to be serious. They were playing up the silliest, leaning into the slapstick, and making it impossible not to smile. But beneath the goofiness lies a serious accomplishment. Night Boat to Cairo became a signature track for Madness, one of those songs that's as essential to their legacy as Baggy Trousers and Our House, both of which we'll hear in later episodes. It's a staple of their live shows, where it always gets the crowd moving and shouting along. Commercially, the single didn't top the charts, but it didn't need to. It solidified Madness's reputation as the ultimate purveyors of musical mischief. Track that transcends trends and genres, appealing to ska diehards, casual fans, and anyone who loves a song that can transport you literally and figuratively. Night Back to Cairo, 3 minutes and 31 seconds of pure escapism, wrapped in a jaunty ska bow. A song that takes you somewhere, even if that somewhere is entirely in your head. It enters our pantheon for the sheer differentiation compared to anything else coming out from the ska movement. Next, we're delving into something darker, moodier, more introspective, something gothic. We're about to introduce one of the largest alternative bands of the 80s and 90s. Let's talk about The Cure, with a single that's a haunting verdant labyrinth. We're talking about A Forest. This is track 10, playlist 8. Let's start with the obvious. A Forest is iconic. It's a track that sprawls like the titular woods it evokes, but don't be fooled by its gothic allure. This is no simple walk in the park. Released as the lead single from The Cure's second studio album, 17 Seconds, A Forest is the moment when Robert Smith and his bandmates planted their flag deep into the soil of what would become their signature sound. Icy, atmospheric, and just a little otherworldly. The song kicks off with a pulse, a tight, simple guitar riff, a lone bass line, courtesy of Simon Gallup, that feels like it's leading you somewhere. But where? Layer by layer, the track unfurls. Lol Tolhurst's minimalist drumming, a hypnotic guitar riff that's all reverb and shadows, and then of course Robert Smith's voice. His delivery is ghostly, distant, yet somehow urgent, as he weaves a tale of pursuit and loss. Smith's lyrics are cryptic, dreamlike. Come closer and see into the trees, find the girl while you can. It's about a chase, an unattainable figure disappearing into the forest. A metaphor for desire, isolation, both. Whatever the interpretation, the song leaves you feeling lost, but in the best way possible. It's not about finding your way out of the forest, it's about losing yourself in it. 1980 was a turning point for The Cure. They debuted the year prior with Three Imaginary Boys, an album that flirted with punk but didn't yet reveal their full potential. 17 Seconds was different. It was darker, moodier, a record that felt like it was made under perpetual twilight. A Forest was its centrepiece, a nearly 6-minute journey that stood apart from the 3-minute pop songs cluttering the airwaves. But here's the kicker. It almost didn't make waves. Upon release, A Forest climbed to a modest number 31 on the UK singles chart. Respectable, sure, but hardly earth-shattering. Yet, like all great art, its legacy grew over time. It became the band's first tour anthem, a staple of their live shows. The live version, extended, more dynamic, took on a life of its own, often stretching past 10 minutes, with Smith shredding through his guitar solos like he's summoning the very spirits of the woods. And can we just marvel for a second at the production? The sparse soundscape, the use of space, that's producer Mike Hedges at work. He was instrumental in helping The Cure refine their sound, and A Forest was his masterpiece. Every note, every echo, every breath in this track is perfectly placed, creating a world that feels alive and just a little bit menacing. But more than anything, A Forest is a mood. It's the sound of being 20 and aimless, wandering city streets at night, cigarette in hand, stars somewhere above the smog. It's that ache in your chest you can't quite name. It's quintessentially 1980 and yet timeless. Let's not forget what this song did for The Cure's trajectory. A Forest wasn't just a standout track, it was a statement. It said, we're not here to play nice, and we're certainly not here to make top of the pops hits. We're here to build worlds. And they did. So when the mood takes you, cue up at Forest. Close your eyes and let it take you wherever it takes you. Get lost in it, because that's the point. Next up, we saw them on the last playlist, playlist 7, kicking the door off its new wave hinges with the classic Atomic. Yes, we're back with Blondie. This time, we're dialing into the one and only Call Me, a track so iconic it transcended genres, fashion trends, and maybe even a few phone networks. Buckle up and pull your best Magnum if you're a Zoolander fan. This song features in the opening credits if you've not seen it, by the way. And by the way, you're missing out. This is track 11, playlist 8. Released in 1980, Call Me was a juggernaut. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 6 consecutive weeks, became the biggest hit of 1980 in the US, and was nominated for a Grammy for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal. The single sold over 1 million copies and helped cement Blondie's place in the music history books. But Call Me wasn't born in a vacuum. It was the product of collaboration, serendipity, and disco. Yes, that old chestnut, disco. Enter Giorgio Moroder, one of the godfathers of electronic dance music, fresh off his work with Donna Summer. Moroder had been commissioned to write a theme song for the Richard Gere film American Gigolo. Good film, by the way. I recommend it. His original idea, titled Man Machine, needed a lyrical makeover. Debbie Harry, Blondie's enigmatic lead singer and lyricist, stepped in. In a whirlwind session, she transformed Moroder's track into Call Me, penning lyrics that captured a heady mix of lust, wanderlust, and a touch of danger. It's the perfect match for a movie about a high-end male escort cruising the streets of LA. From the moment Call Me kicks in, you're hit with that pulsating beat and a driving rhythm that screams Moroder. But Blondie added their trademark grit, Harry's voice, part siren, part streetwise storyteller, soars over the instrumentation, delivering lines like Call Me. On the line, you can call me anytime, with equal parts seduction and authority. The guitars snarl, the bass thumps, and the synth shimmers like city lights reflected on wet pavement. Call Me is sung in multiple languages. Harry peppers in Italian, French and Spanish, making the song an international affair. It's a nod to Blondie's chameleonic nature, effortlessly blending punk, disco, new wave and pop into a sound that was uniquely theirs. Call Me became synonymous with American Gigolo and helped usher in the era of soundtracks as vital marketing tools for movies. You can't think of Richard Gere's Armani-clad character without hearing Harry's voice echoing in the background. And let's talk fashion. Debbie Harry, with her platinum blonde hair, punk rock attitude, and penchant for daring outfits, was a style icon. Call Me solidified her as not just a rock star, but a cultural muse, influencing everyone from Madonna to Lady Gaga. More than 4 decades later, Call Me still feels fresh. It's been covered, sampled, and remixed countless times, appearing in everything from commercials to video games to the aforementioned Zoolander. It's a testament to Blondie's genius and Moroder's pioneering production that the song still resonates. Track 12 today takes the foot off the gas. Every now and again I don't mind a slice of easy listening or jazz, and our next track is no different. Let's talk about The Groove by Rodney Franklin, his breakout hit from 1980. The kind of song that feels less like a piece of music and more like a slice of atmosphere, bottled up and released just in time for you to strut into your life's next montage. It's jazzy, it's funky, it's got a pulse that's equal parts effortless and electric, a perfect encapsulation of an era where jazz fusion and funk were having a love affair on the dance floor. And we're nearly bookending the playlist with 2 tracks with groove in the title. Well, almost. Press play now. First, some backstory. Rodney Franklin was just 21 years old when he recorded The Groove, and the track landed squarely on his sophomore album, In the Centre. This was March 1980, an interstitial moment in music history. Disco was waning, hip-hop was germinating, and smooth jazz was starting to carve out its own shiny corner in the world. Franklin, a pianist hailing from Berkeley, California, had been steeped in the Bay Area's eclectic music scene where gospel, funk and jazz swirled together like a kaleidoscope. The groove is emblematic of that swirl. From the opening bars, the track hooks you with a sinuous bass line that's almost hypnotic, pulling you into its orbit. And then there's Franklin's keyboard work, which is so clean and precise it could cut glass, but never feels sterile. His Rhodes piano sound is buttery smooth, yet brimming with personality, skittering between melody and improvisation like it's daring you to keep up. The track's backbone is its groove, appropriately enough. The rhythm section locks into a tight, syncopated funk pattern that's impossible not to move to. There's also a lightly disco-infused shimmer to the arrangement, with subtle guitar flourishes and a steady hi-hat that keeps the energy bubbling without boiling over. And no lyrics. The groove doesn't need words to make its point. It's a song that speaks fluently in the universal language of rhythm. When the single was released, it soared. The groove hit number 10 on the US R&B charts and even made some headway on pop radio, a rare feat for an instrumental track. Critically, the groove signalled a shift for instrumental music in the mainstream. While jazz purists might have scoffed at its commercial appeal, fans ate it up, embracing the track as a bridge between old-school jazz artistry and the new-school pop sensibilities of the 80s. Franklin himself saw it as a celebration of music's power to transcend boundaries, something he'd returned to throughout his career, even as he dabbled in more experimental compositions and collaborations. Where It Takes Me is a jazz lounge, probably smelling a lot of mahogany and cigars. I have a single malt in my hand and I'm nursing it as the groove plays in the background. Where does it take you? Our final track today is another debut. Picture it, it's the dawn of the 80s. Disco is on its way out, punk has come and gone, and post-punk is still lurking in the shadows of CBGB. But here comes Christopher Cross, a baby-faced singer-songwriter from San Antonio, Texas, with a voice smoother than a velvety Cabernet and melodies that feel like a summer sunset over the Pacific. In February 1980, he released his debut single, Ride Like the Wind, and the world was never quite the same. This is track 13, our last song on this playlist. We're talking about a song that hits you immediately with its galloping rhythm, the faint whisper of wind in the background, and Cross's declaration, "It is the night, my body's weak, I'm on the run, no time to sleep." And that's it, you're in. Let's talk structure. Ride Like the Wind is essentially a story song, a quasi-Western narrative about a man on the lam, galloping, metaphorically and maybe literally, towards the Mexican border. Cross himself has called it a sort of a cinematic escape. He allegedly wrote the song while drunk, which makes the line "It's so far away" hit differently, like a bleary-eyed realisation rather than a poetic flourish. And then there's the Michael McDonald factor. Yes, folks, Mr. Yacht Rock himself is on background vocals. His trademark smoky baritone wafts into the chorus like an old friend, reminding you to refill your margarita. That chorus, "Ride Like the Wind to be free again," is peak escapism, a triumphant declaration of freedom that's both cheesy and transcendent. The single peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, held back only by Blondie's disco-inflected Call Me. Tough competition, honestly. But it still became an anthem of the era, helping propel Cross's debut album to multi-platinum status and earning him a Grammy sweep in 1981, including Album of the Year and Record of the Year for Sailing. Yes, this is the same album that gave us Sailing, another soft rock giant. So what's the secret sauce? Part of what makes Ride Like the Wind endure is its strange juxtaposition. On the one hand, you have Cross's gentle, pristine vocal delivery, the audio equivalent of a cashmere sweater. On the other, you've got a narrative about a dude who's possibly on the run from the law. It's not a brooding outlaw tale, though it's fun. The rhythm is insistent but breezy, anchored by a driving bass line and those ethereal, wind-like keyboard flourishes. It's a song about fleeing that somehow feels like it's always on vacation. Over the years, Ride Like the Wind has become a shorthand for a certain vibe. Will Ferrell hilariously covered it in Anchorman 2, cementing its status as a karaoke classic. And who can forget the yacht rock resurgence of the 2000s, where Cross's work became a cornerstone of playlists designed for sipping margaritas on sun-drenched decks. So why does it still resonate? Maybe because we all want to ride like the wind, not necessarily to flee from our crimes, although hey-ho, no judgment, but to escape the mundane, to feel untethered, to dream of an endless horizon. Christopher Cross captured that feeling in just under 4 minutes, and for that, we thank him. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the tracks that make life worth living. In playlist 9, we'll be jumping into more of the end days of disco with the Average White Band and the Crown Heights Affair, hearing the Beats' crowning achievement and then crowning it off with a Jonah Louie track which may best sum up 1980. Until then, remember, ride like the wind, my friends, ride like the wind. Take care.